Hello and welcome to another Wolftime gaming video. If you were here yesterday, you'll know that we are going back to Star Wars Armada, revisiting all these little ships because, I'll be honest, I have loads of little ships that haven't got any paint on them yet. So over the next few months, I'm going to be painting all of these up and you'll get new videos every weekend. So before you go any further, make sure you do hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any. Before we get started painting the Shadowcaster though, let's get that kettle on. So if you've been here before, you'll know the first thing you need to do is get a really good base coat on all of your miniatures. Now as you can see here, I've got plenty of little ships, so I decided to do them all at once or in a few little batches if I'm completely honest. So I've got some little cocktail sticks, pop them into a box, a little bit of blue tack on the end and just stuck them all to it. You can then spray all of these ships without worrying about them blowing off the board if you're trying to do it just on a board or you're not getting anything on your stands. Now I've actually used Games Workshop's Grey Seer to do this because it's an absolutely fantastic base coat. It really seeps into the model, as you can see here, doesn't take away any of the detail, so you can get a fantastic looking miniature with very minimal effort. If you saw the Millennium Falcon video yesterday, you'll know the first thing I'm doing is painting the cockpit and all those little black areas, and to do that I'm using a contrast paint called Black Templar, and if you watch any of my other videos you'll know I use this paint a lot. It's one of the ones that it's really one of my go-to paints. It's fantastic, seeps into any of the recesses really nicely. It almost works in my head a little bit like a shade, but obviously you've got the pigment in there that gives you a really dark colour, so it works really well for black. It doesn't go completely pitch black either. It drops off those raised areas really nicely, so it adds that shading without you really having to make much of an effort. And the second paint I'm using is another contrast paint called Basilican Grey. Now as you can see, there's a few panels on there that I wanted to darken down. I'm trying to get this one looking like the Shadowcaster you can see there that we saw in Star Wars Rebels. So I'm trying to get it as close as possible. If you notice on the thumbnail, there is another slightly different version that I'm painting as well. I didn't want both of them to be the same, so I've gone with a few different colours, or the same colours but in a different order, which we'll come on to in a little while. But as you can see, the grey areas on this vessel are quite extenuous. There's a lot of these grey areas, a lot of panels that are grey. Bits on the engines you can see I'm painting here, and around the weapons just at the front there. I wanted all these to be that sort of basilican grey colour. Now you can see I'm starting painting this with without putting it on the stand with my fingers, because I found it a little bit easier at this stage because I want to move the model around a lot. Now the next paint I'm going to be using is a base paint from Citadel called Avaland Sunset. Now this is a really sort of nice mid sort of yellow. It's not too bright, not too dark. Works quite well for this. I thought about going for a lighter yellow initially, but to be honest with you, I didn't want it too bright, and because we're putting the shade on in a little while, I didn't want it to darken it down too much, so I went with the Avaland Sunset, and it works really well. You'll see in a little while the effect that it has when we put the shade on, but just take your time with the miniature if you're trying to do this, trying to copy what I'm doing here. Get a very fine tip brush and just literally dot the paint on there. You can see I'm doing the red now, and I'm using Evil Sunz Scarlet to do these red areas, and all I'm doing is touching that little bit of paint on there. I'm not covering the whole paintbrush in paint. I'm not trying to really globule, like big globules of paint on there. I'm literally getting a tiny bit of red onto the paintbrush just on the end there, and just dropping it into all these little areas that I want to actually stand out as the main sort of colours of the vessel itself. And I'm trying to stick as close as I can to the you know, the bigger vessel that we've seen in Star Wars Rebels, but I'm not going to be able to get it exact, to be honest. Now the engines are very different from each vessel we go with. We're going with the blue sort of a colour with the Shadowcaster, and I'm starting with Sotek Green. It's a really nice sort of turquoisey blue colour. And then you can go straight over the top of that with Temple Guard Blue, but don't cover the whole of the Sotek Green area. Just try and get the centre of the circle there. And what it does, it sort of makes it look like the engine is glowing from the centre, and it looks absolutely brilliant. And to make it a little bit easier, you can see I've just popped it on the stand now because I want to try and drop a bit of shade around the whole miniature. But already you can see the mini's looking absolutely fantastic, and the colours aren't too far away, what we can see on the reference image there. So it's starting to work. However, it is still quite light, and there's a lot of detail on there we want to try and pull out. To do that, using Null Oil from Games Workshop, just coating the whole of the miniature, as you can see here. Now we don't want to go too heavy, but we do want to concentrate around some of the sunken areas, so it naturally drops into those areas and adds that shade. But we do want to cover the whole miniature at this point, apart from those glowing engines. If you do go over the engine, don't worry. Go back to it after, pick up your Sotek Green and your Temple Guard Blue again, and just do it. Drop a little bit of paint on those engines again to revitalise that glow. But you do cover the whole of the actual miniature with this, and it looks like this at the end, which I think is absolutely fantastic. You can see what it's done. That shade has really dropped nicely into all those recessed areas and turned the grey seer base paint essentially into a very light grey paint. You see the engines are really shining nicely, and on the tabletop you might think, oh, I'm miles away, I'm never going to notice that. You really do with this, and it looks brilliant afterwards. You can see all I've done is flip the colours slightly on the vessel to the right there, and I've gone with a red main colour instead of the yellow. And I really do think this works. I think it looks absolutely brilliant, makes it stand out, makes it look like a different vessel, even though when it comes to fleets you may have many of them the same. We know the Rebels have lots of different ships and they all want to look slightly different, but I'm really pleased with how it's turned out. Thanks for watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of our future videos. Go and check out the channel now for more great content. There's loads of painting videos including Games Workshop, Star Wars, and loads of fantasy settings such as Frostgrave and one of my favourites, Boros and Badgers. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one.